Welcome back to Seattle Sucks Podcast. I'm joined here with a very special guest. I'm very excited to have her. Vanishing Seattle, otherwise known by her given name of Cynthia Brothers. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we're super excited. I feel like we've been talking since before like Halloween, trying to make this happen maybe.
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of surreal and nice to have you here.
Thank you.
So it's just the two of us today. Unfortunately, Greg couldn't make it. He had a family thing happen, but that's okay. I think we're going to have a great time.
Yeah, we got all these snacks, so that's...
Yeah, there's a lot. I took a picture so that I can just prove that it happened.
Yeah,
but,
cornucopia of snacks.
Yeah, it's a nice...
always a good time.
A still life of carbohydrates, I think, mostly. But, we recently went to a podcast meetup, and a lot of people asked us, oh, what's your next show going to be? Or asked me anyway. And I said, well, we're going to have Vanishing Seattle on. And you've been working at least, I think, since 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been around for, now several years, and you've definitely kind of been in my mind. But when I mentioned that you were going to be on our show, I was surprised a few people weren't aware of your work. So
what? How dare they?
Exactly. I feel like what you've done is, it's definitely been prominent in my own life, and kind of like when I heard about you, and I don't recall when, it might have been after 2016, has been something I've followed and thought about a lot. But since I kind of expected everyone to know, who you were, what you do, and so I was wondering if you could kind of sort of in your own words maybe say what you do, and how you started, and then we can see where that goes.
Yeah, definitely, and thank you for that generous introduction. I definitely don't expect that people know about it. I'm actually kind of like still surprised when I meet people and they say that they have been following it, or they're like, oh, that's you, because I think when I started, I definitely like just kind of did it because I wanted to do it, and didn't have like any kind of notion or like grand plan about where I wanted to take it, or like any aspirations. So I would describe Vanishing Seattle like in a nutshell as a project that documents the disappearing and displaced spaces and I guess the changing landscape of Seattle. So that can include small businesses, local institutions, homes and houses, churches, and then I'll usually try to accompany that with some research and writing that I'll put in. Most of it originates from Instagram, so it's very visual. Pictures that I take, or other people might send me stuff, or I'll repost other people's stuff. But I'll usually try to do some research and some information that just kind of explains or like shows what's there now, or what was there, and then what's kind of replacing it. And sometimes there'll be some really interesting history, or just kind of fun facts, or people's like stories about why these places might be like important to local culture and communities, and the role they played, and kind of like I think beg some questions about what does it mean in terms of like what's replacing it. And there's only so much I can do, because it's like there's a character limit on Instagram, which I constantly struggle with. So I started it in January of 2016, and it's not like a lot of the kind of issues that are bound up in the project, like change and growth and gentrification and displacement. It's not like these are issues that just like came out of nowhere in 2016. I think it's been like happening for a while, but also it's basically been happening since like the Denny party landed. So it's like that's where the city was like built on dispossession of land and displacement. And sometimes I'll try to kind of remind people of that, or highlight some of those parallels. It can not to like equate or like diminish what happened with Coast Salish peoples with like exactly what's happening today, but I think like that's our legacy. And there are some parallels, and we're kind of like repeating that through urban colonization and displacement of people. And there's some like really scary parallels in the way that we like talk about it and justify it and the narrative around it. So anyway, so I was born and raised in Seattle, and I've been here most of my life except about 5 years in New York. And I think in some ways being in New York and living in downtown Manhattan kind of primed me. I mean, I already had a little bit of culture shock when I was over there, because it's just like, the like huge like wealth gap and like all the money and like class differentials and like I mean they're pretty much like pros at gentrifying people out of their neighborhoods.
Totally.
And I saw a lot of that. There's some of kind of like the signs and like the systemic factors. So when I came back to Seattle around 2010, 2011, I think a lot of that stuff was kind of starting to show up more and kind of accelerate in Seattle. So I've been just kind of like thinking about it and seeing it, being in my feelings about it for a while. And then in 2016, it was like an actual place, an event that prompted me to like start it. And that was a Filipino restaurant on North Beacon Hill called Inay's. And one of my friends, Atasha Manila, is a drag performer. And she worked at Inay's as a server, and then also on Friday was known for doing this incredible like 3-hour-long one-woman drag show. And North Beacon Hill has been gentrifying. There's a light rail, like, blah blah blah. So the rent was raised at Inay's, and they had to close. So I was there for their closing night, which also happened to be the last performance that Atasha was doing there. And like it brought out, I mean, it always brings out a lot of people, but especially for that night. I mean, you had all of her friends and family and supporters. You had folks from the Filipinx community, from the queer community, Beacon Hill area. And one of the songs that she did was Effie's song from Dreamgirls, and I'm Telling You I'm Not Going. And so I was just taking pictures and video, and I went home that night and I just kind of like started the account. Just like grabbed the handle and shared a video clip of Atasha doing that song. Because I just wanted to like capture it and share it with people. And kind of as a protest, like this is fucked up. Like this is an amazing magical space where you have like a cross section of all these different Seattle communities. It's it's not something that you can just like replicate. Like this is a very unique and uniquely Seattle like cultural space. So like this is what it means to, this is what was here, and this is like what we lose when a place like Inay's gets pushed out. So so I just kind of kept posting from there, from kind of like that first like urge to do it. Just kept continually posting, and then it just kind of got this momentum, and I've got, I don't know, maybe like 35 or 40,000 followers across Instagram and Facebook, which is kind of terrifying to think about.
That's quite an audience for sure.
But that was kind of the genesis of it. And I didn't come up with the term either. I want to say like Clark Humphrey, who's an awesome local author and journalist. He wrote Loser, the real Seattle music story. He also wrote a book called Vanishing Seattle in 2006, I think, out of Arcadia Press, that had a lot of pictures of Seattle from like mid-century up to like the late 90s. I think there's a Vanishing New York and a Vanishing San Francisco. People have reached out and been like, can I start a Vanishing Boise? And I'm like, I mean, I don't own it. I mean, I think it's many people who might want to kind of adopt it to their own local circumstance, then that's cool. Like let 1,000 flowers bloom.
So that is very interesting, and it touches on something that I was curious about. It's pretty easy to overgeneralize local phenomenon to be sort of universal phenomenon, but it sounds like the experience of Seattle is maybe not unique. I mean, if of course, like you said, New York has a long history of this. I'm sure London has a long history of this too. But a city like Boise, you wouldn't necessarily think about gentrification. So do you think that the characteristics in Seattle are unique, or do you think that this is sort of a phenomenon that is bigger than just this city?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely something that you'll see repeated in many urban areas. I think a lot of it is just kind of a function of capitalism, honestly. Yeah. And I think, each city, and then each city is kind of unique in the way that they choose to address it, not address it, or actively encourage it in their like local and state policies.
Right.
I think a lot of times cities are kind of active participants in this growth machine that does encourage gentrification and displacement because of like the tax base, or their desire to become a world-class city, or their their obligation that they feel to big business and developers and corporations. So, I mean, I think there are places where you'll see some local policies and interventions that will kind of try and help mitigate that. And I think the thing about Seattle, and the thing that sometimes can be so heartbreaking, is that for all of our kind of progressiveness and social progressiveness, I think when it comes to kind of like economics, it comes to like an actual impact of our policies, like it's pretty fucking bad.
Absolutely.
And what we're willing to do to like help everyday people seems to be less and less, especially if people are like, oh, we don't want to turn to San Francisco or Manhattan. It's like, well, they've actually like done some stuff that has gone way farther than what our leadership has been willing to do, whether that's like policies that like the percentage of affordable housing that might be determined as a trade-off for like up zones or something, or their anti-displacement measures, or
New York has rent control, right?
Rent control, it's a great example. Or even just alternative models of ownership, like land trusts, co-ops. It just like seems like we're more and more of like a neoliberal free market, libertarian, so it's like cool it's great if you're like, we're a sanctuary city, we're gonna paint rainbow crosswalks. But it's like the reality is that people can't, if immigrants and refugees and queer people like either are getting priced out of their neighborhoods or can't even access living here in the first place, then like what good does that do if like they can't even exist here anymore? It's kind of just like, I don't know, just typical kind of like, liberalism, where you like want to look good, but are you really actually willing to like put some skin in the game or really do something that's going to make a meaningful impact? So I think there's a template for it. I think it's definitely happening all over, but I think Seattle can and should do better.
Well, we were talking about this before we started taping, but do you think that part of what's happening here, and part of this acceptance and willingness to allow growth to run rampant, for lack of a better analogy, is because of a sort of changing in the political climate and culture of Seattle? I mean, I think you specifically talked about this clash between old and new Seattle. Do you think like that makes this problem more acute, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like it kind of goes hand in hand, and sometimes I, somewhat like facetiously, or might talk about or like use hashtags, and I didn't come up with this, but like that's like old Seattle and new Seattle, and obviously like stuff doesn't really exist in dichotomies like that. But I mean, I'm always trying to kind of figure out, or just like thinking about, kind of like the kernels of truth in that. That I think when you have like all this money that's coming in, you have all these forces that in a lot of ways are kind of erasing and invisibilizing what came before it, much like in the tradition of colonization and displacement. Someone tried to like lecture me on the definition of like colonization on my account the other day. I'm like,
yikes.
I didn't come up with the term colonization, dude. It's like, look it up.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't even define what that looks like. Like it manifests in a variety of ways, and it happens in urban environments, and it's happening here. Just ask any person of color who's been pushed out.
Totally.
Anyway, so I think like when you have these changes that just really exacerbate this like socioeconomic divide and the stratification, it's like there's not only economic impacts of that, but there's like a cultural impact, you know?
Totally.
Where it just really changes like the social infrastructure, the social fabric, also the cultural identity. And when you can't have like artists and the working class and educators and service workers, like when they can't afford to be here, you know, how does that really change like the cultural identity and makeup of the city? And it seems like a lot of the values that kind of go along with like, you know, just making a lot of money or just geared towards like disrupting and you know, maximizing productivity and shit like that. It's like, what is this, how is that driving the culture of like the new Seattle? Are we just going to be known for like being a world-class city, and that means we're like high tech? Like, what do we lose, or how much are we able to balance that out, or still retain our identity as like, you know, like a arts community, or kind of like a place where people who are somewhat, you know, outsiders or outcasts or don't fit, you know, I mean, that's been very much a part of our history, like the working class and the blue collar and the industry. So it seems like sometimes there's I don't know, just like an ignorance of where we came from, you know, both the good and the bad.
There's a lot to chew on.
For sure. That's a lot of place with that one.
No, not at all. It's just like it's somewhat disheartening, because I just there's this whirlwind in my mind that you've touched on so many things. It's like when I was in 5th grade, I think it was 5th grade, I remember the rise of grunge. And I mean, that was born out of Seattle and this area, right? And it's like, it's kind of funny to think about that movement coming out of the city that we have now. Like that would never, it feels like it would never happen now. And this is something that I've kind of personally belabored on the show, but it does feel like we've paid a very heavy cultural price, which is in addition to like, I mean, culture extends, as you started by saying, the origin story of Vanishing Seattle. It's like, it's a place, it's a community, it's a thing. But it's like, you know, music, art, institutions, it's really disappointing.
Yeah, and it's just like, I feel like as there are less and less, you know, because I post a lot of like buildings and like physical places, but really at the end of the day, it's more so about like the people and the communities that are attached to those places, or that those spaces allow to, you know, to thrive. You know, so someone might be like, oh, who cares, it's just like a little funky dive bar or something, like, oh my god, stop, you know. But I mean, it's really about like, well, what kind of people go here, and what kind of like connections are there, and what kind of like scene or community might support. And then when that goes away, or when places that are like that are accessed by a certain, you know, socioeconomic, you know, class, or, you know, type of folks, when those type of places can't exist or like pay that type of rent anymore, and you basically like eliminate that out of like the makeup of a neighborhood or a city, and I feel like those places are becoming increasingly rare.
Definitely.
Where you will go and see like, that's multi-generational. You'll see old timers that are hanging out there or working there. You'll see people that are of a different race, of a different class, like, and these are places like the Busch Garden is a prime example, that, you know, is really important. Like that for me, that's like my cheers. And it's more than just like, I mean, there's this magic that exists there from going there and like just interacting from the regulars and people like
Yeah.
singing Barry White, ballads to each other, and just like it's awesome.
Yeah.
But it's also there's a real legacy of there's so many activists that were mentored in that space. Like that was Uncle Bob Santos's space. That's where the Gang of Four would hang out and meet. Like there's a real legacy from when it opened in the 50s through like the like third world liberation movement in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And now it was bought by a developer.
Sure.
And they're kind of just like at first they didn't seem to really know the importance of Bush. They seemed to like dismiss it and be like, oh, no one cares about this place. It's dying here. It's just an old funky bar. Like it's not even like nothing in its former glory in its heyday of the 60s. And it's like, but people can come here because of that fact.
Right.
Because it's accessible. And you can get a cheap drink. And you can sit next to someone who, is in their 70s. And, someone who's just like living a different existence and like build community from that.
Totally.
And they just seem interested in like a light bulb went off. Like, oh, can I like use this as like a way to market as like my new like market rate housing project? Like, let's call it the Busch Garden Homes, and we'll have like a little timeline of. And it's like, fuck you, like the stories are not here for you to be mined.
Totally.
For you to mine it to profit off of it. But a lot of time that's how it gets framed, whether it's like the old Minnie's diner or like places in Capitol Hill. It's like, oh cool, we're in a neighborhood, ha ha. But it's like, but a lot of times people don't feel everybody's a Q Patrol. It's like these genuine places that you can't manufacture for purposes of like commodifying or making like a tourist attraction. Like that's not where the real shit is.
Right.
Like that's how you kill it.
No, that is like the perfect analogy, because it's funny, you're wearing a Mama's shirt and it's like, I mean, that same thing's probably going to happen to Mama's, right? Because aren't they going to build a giant thing on top of it, essentially?
I believe so. I mean, I would like a shout out to Friends of Historic Belltown, who have been fighting for a long time and mobilized a lot of the industry folks and like service workers and musicians and artists living down there who were able to get Mama's landmarked. But there's a building called the Wayne, and I might be like totally fucking this up, but that's kind of anchoring that whole strip, that whole block on 2nd, where you have Mama's, Shorty's, Lava Lounge, Chula's, Crocodile, Rocco's. And I can't remember if Wayne got landmarked or not, but basically it's like you can get something landmarked and it can still get torn down. Okay. Like the protections are not awesome.
That robust,
So I think Wayne might be lost, and so like now they're kind of, Shorty's is moving, Rocco's is moving. Like the future of that block, which is like in a lot of ways like the heart and soul of Belltown, and old Belltown, like the last thing like remaining there. Shit, it's like it could all be 29-story high-rises in a few years, because that's what they've been trying to do. And Rise Up Belltown is another great Instagram account that I would recommend people check out, because they just go around and they take pictures of people who hang out or like live or work in Belltown, and like they ask them just a couple questions like, what do you love about this place and what would you tell the mayor? And all of them are like, just leave us the fuck alone. Like, don't fuck it up. We're begging you. This is an awesome community. Like, please don't gentrify us. So
Okay. Well, I have two follow-up thoughts on that. One is negative, and one I think is more positive. One thing I wanted to mention, like related to what you're talking about, that I love that you do, and I don't know if you started doing this early, but I've seen it a lot recently, is where you say not vanishing, and you kind of amplify a place that is maybe in an area that is gentrifying or under sort of this assault, and I think that's a really positive thing that you've been able to do.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll just pause.
Hello. Hi. How are you? Oh no.
Hi, it's Colin. At this point in the conversation, my daughter and wife returned from a birthday party. My wife is a huge fan of the work that Cynthia does with Vanishing Seattle and ended up sitting in with us for the remainder of the show. We had a lively, unstructured chat about the places we miss, the places we love, and the places under threat. Due to a series of errors that I made, you won't get a chance to listen to any of that. I'm sorry. With that in mind, please pardon the continuity problems and bear with us. Thank you. I mean, you have like a pretty impressive knowledge of a lot of places, which, I mean, I know we just admitted, and on our show we've admitted before that we're not technically Seattleites. I mean, we grew up in the suburbs, but it's very rare, I feel like, to come across people with any kind of memory of even Seattle 5 years ago. So to hear these stories, see these places, like, it's pretty impressive and valuable.
I mean, the project has been a good excuse for me to kind of like go hang out and be like a barfly. And, like, talking to small business owners and, which is stuff that I feel like I used to do a lot more, or maybe people in general used to do a lot.
Definitely,
more. Just like go and hang out and get outside of their houses. But now it's like everything's so attuned towards like, just getting stuff at your doorstep, getting stuff online. I feel like in some ways kind of like that informal civic life gets more and more eroded. But I mean, it isn't a good excuse. I mean, I'd be like, I'm gonna go here and just like hang out at the bar for a couple hours and like.
And so that's your process. Like you might know a place, or somebody will give you a tip and say, hey, check this place out, and then you go. Yeah,
it varies. Like, I kind of like have this running list of places, either for like the not vanishing, small business Saturdays, or for places that are on their way out. Some places I might already like know about and have a personal story. Some places I don't, and so I'll go and kind of talk to. I'll try sometimes to go and like talk to the business owner or like, get a feel for it. Like it's kind of like vibe and character, because like these places are like characters.
Totally,
a lot of them. Or I'll gather information that people will send me. Like they might be like, oh, this place is going away, or can you highlight this place? I love it for A, B, and C reason. And I'll ask them to like share where they like it, share some information. Or I'll like do research online and like synthesize different like stories I might find. Or, anecdotes or reviews. So it's kind of like a variety of ways that I gather the information. But it is fun to like go in person.
That's awesome.
There's still so many places that it's just like, that's how I learn, is just through the process of documenting and visiting and writing about places.
I mean, you're basically like a cultural historian, it seems like.
Like the bars and like
it's really cool. I think it's awesome.
Memorializing people's important things in people's lives too, in a way. It's documenting these histories that people wouldn't necessarily otherwise have a reason or an excuse to memorialize. So
thank you.
And I've learned a lot about, I've learned just generally, but even like with Mrs. Cook's, I'd never been there.
Me neither.
But I walked by or driven past it a million times, and I had just kind of written it off as another U Village store. I didn't know that, it was owned independently by a woman on all these things, and so.
I didn't know that either. So that's like the nice thing about people participating, is that people will send me stuff that will lead me down this road, or they'll just provide me with a bunch of information. And I do feel kind of like a duty to try and pay like a somewhat of a tribute, I guess, and like try to do some due diligence, or like highlight the reasons why people liked it or felt attached to it, even if it's a place that like I haven't been, or maybe like I personally might not be interested in it. Like Mrs. Cook's, like I don't do shit when it comes to cooking.
Sure.
And I like actively avoid U Village like the plague. Like, now,
amen.
Like, now U Village is just like, oh my god, like this is like Bellevue, like Real Housewives of Bellevue, like from hell or something. But when I was reading about Mrs. Cook's, like I could appreciate. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, and they've like been sustained this long by this community, and obviously they really value it. So it's I know there's always probably going to be like a personal bias because like I'm curating it, but I love learning about like these new places that I didn't really give a second thought to before.
I thought that story was really interesting, the Mrs. Cook's one, because you talked about, or you mentioned in your post, that she was selling really unconventional things that you couldn't find anywhere, and it's like, so it's interesting to think about that kind of business model too, of that it can still exist, and that it can even exist in U Village of all places. It's kind of amazing.
Like locals, like big box stores are not going to, for the most part, not going to sell like stuff from local, businesses or makers or artists. Another interesting thing that I think I couldn't fit into that caption was, I think Mrs. Cook's was one of the first stores to sell Starbucks beans before Starbucks like became like national.
That's pretty interesting.
Like that's like how they've been around since like 76 or something.
Yeah,
so
long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess when you've been around for that long, you kind of amass some interesting, stories and
for sure. Yeah. Well, we've been talking for a while, but
Are you still recording?
I am.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. All right, cool.
Yeah. So I don't want to keep you, too much longer because we've already recorded for like an hour and you've been here for longer. But
eating out of house and home.
I mean, it's all for you. But I did want to highlight, I guess, what to me as an outsider seemed to be a cool focus of the demolition of the viaduct. The looming demolition of the viaduct, which is scheduled to happen, I think, January 11th.
It's going to close.
It's going to close and then
demolition to follow. I'm not entirely sure on the schedule, but yeah.
I mean, I think your approach has been really interesting, soliciting people for stories. Like you posted a video of somebody shooting like a music video, maybe in the aqueduct.
Tad.
Yeah,
Tad Doyle.
That was
riding on top of a car.
That was pretty cool. Like even now, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, when I saw that, I was like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah,
it just kind of sums it up.
Yeah. Well, yeah. To what we said earlier, like it's kind of it feels like that could never happen in the Seattle of today. Like no one would do that now. But that's certainly one of my favorite views of the city is when you're coming. Like if you're coming back from the airport or something, for example, if you're heading north on the viaduct, like that view is incredible. And I used to work in the Maritime building, so like.
Oh, in Pioneer Square?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Before our company got moved out when.
Yeah, weren't there a lot of artists that lived there and stuff too? Like
there was
said that they lived
a lot
in,
of stuff going on.
The lofts there, and they got evicted.
Yeah, I think everyone got let go because they needed to. Well, their plan was to just destroy it, but they ended up getting a protection for the shell of the building, and then they built up. Through it. Yeah, they gutted it, basically.
Do you know what's in there now?
I think the plan was to do more offices and stuff. Yeah, but so I don't think it's residential, but I don't know for sure. But
yeah, there's a lot of like street artists and like local artists that were in that building, and a lot of other buildings in Pioneer Square, obviously.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess like I just wanted to say that is certainly one of, like I said, my favorite views of the city, like weirdly one of my favorite parts of the city for being a big concrete thing. And we were talking before the show that it feels kind of symbolic because I think you said it was built in like the 50s. I think in your early 50s
or something.
Yeah, I think that's what I recall. And then to see it sort of come down in our lifetime, it's like it feels to me very symbolic of what's happening in Seattle. That it's like, I mean, we're gonna get a surface option allegedly down on the waterfront, but like there's all this, the squeeze is gonna happen as a result of this, and we're gonna lose. I mean, you're gonna lose that view. You're gonna lose that history. And so, I mean, I'm curious your thoughts on that, and then also maybe like what you've heard from other folks, because clearly people are sending you their memories and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I know the viaduct is kind of a contentious thing. Like people seem to either love it or hate it, and I think the whole process around like its demolition and replacement and like the park and stuff like that is like a very politicized thing that I don't fully like understand. But I mean, I think just personally, like I have a fondness for the viaduct, just growing up here and driving on it with family. Totally. The view, of course. And then also there's something about even the structure itself that I think is beautiful. Like not beautiful in a conventional sense, but it's kind of like gritty and brutal and dark, and to me it kind of is reflective of like what I find beautiful about this city and like the grittiness of this city. There's just something about like the kind of spirit of like, quote unquote old Seattle that the viaduct to me kind of reflects or speaks to.
Yeah.
And again, like a reason why people either like think it's an eyesore or they love it.
Yeah.
So I kind of, just wanted to just have a tribute to it.
Yeah.
And so I, ask folks, and I like invite folks to, tag me or send me their pictures or videos. And I kicked it off with like some of my own, and I was pretty overwhelmed. Like I was just gonna be like, I'll just post like one a day for like a month. Like I'm doing like a month countdown, and I think I got like way more than a month's worth just in the first couple days.
Wow.
Which was like, I guess kind of, validating that's like, for as much like hate as there is out there for the viaduct, like people really do love it, and like that's fine. There's been a lot of people who are like mad about the fact that people are gonna miss the viaduct, and it's like just let people like have their
thing,
their own appreciation for it. Like sure, it's like probably necessary. Like of course, no one is like, we should keep this earthquake trap.
Right. Yeah.
It's not really about that.
Yeah.
People just always have a fondness for things that have been around for a long time that they grew up with, bad or good in my experience too. I think, and that's like you said, that's you're allowed to have that even if it's a complicated relationship or even if something is not purely good or bad. We just have attachments to things, and I think that's just part of being human.
It's not a black or white thing. And then I think there's also this kind of other dimension too that like there's been a lot of businesses and places that, their tenants are being evicted and pushed out. Maritime Building, Highway 99, Blues Club. Because people, there's a gold rush that's going to happen because developers are anticipating when that comes down, and now it's going to be a world-class view. And so, as much as like the viaduct was like car-centric or whatever, or, it was like this big concrete structure, it's like, a lot of people call it like the poor man's view, or like anyone can access it. I know there's going to be like a park or whatever, but in a lot of ways it feels like the waterfront is going to be, and traditionally where there's been a lot of unsheltered people too.
Absolutely,
it's going to be reshaped into like a waterfront for the rich.
Absolutely,
a lot of condos and like a fancy park, and it's just going to become something
inaccessible.
That's very much in the realm of like new Seattle. So I think there's kind of that sense too that it's marking like this line between like what was there and then what kind of like the new aspirational image or whatever of Seattle is. So
that's a good point, because I mean that's certainly something that I've thought about, the land grab and the obvious construction that will be happening, but that will profoundly change our city even more than it's been changed, I think. So, do you have any thoughts about how, because I know on your website you mentioned that there are ways that we can try to kind of combat some of these things that we feel are negative or protect these spaces, but have you heard anything about ways to get involved and try to potentially curb what happens there, or even elsewhere in the city?
I don't really have like, I think there's no one single thing. There's going to be a lot of different fronts that people will have to like engage on, but I think the thing is just to, be engaged and to, I think, like, for me, I know that my account can be, like, a huge, like, bum out. And the point for me is not for people to feel like... Because it is, like, this onslaught of, like, oh, my God, like, there's... This thing is going away. Like, all this stuff is going away. And, like, I can't even keep up with, like... I have a huge backlog of stuff that
I'm sure.
I'll never even get around to posting. But I don't want people to feel overwhelmed. I do want people to, be, like... motivated or inspired in some way to like do something, whether that's learning more about like city processes, or advocating to their elected officials, or making art, or organizing, or like just all the different tools that I think it takes to affect change. And I think maybe just also having like different perspectives, that it's like the city is not necessarily here to cater to like you are one single person or type of person.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of been the way it's going.
Definitely. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of places where, like a halal meat market or like a Chinese herb shop or a barber shop or something. There might be a lot of people in the city who are like, why should I care about that? Or I don't give it a second thought, but they have, a relative amount of privilege to maybe, advocate for the right for those type of places to exist.
Yeah.
Because they're attached to, certain communities and certain
Definitely.
needs. So, I think there's a lot of ways, and people are super creative and kind of, already know what they need and their own solutions.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe just listening to each other's stories and what's important, to, diverse types of people, and then just keep telling those stories so people cannot be erased.
Yeah.
And just, try to get involved in some way, because if we don't, and I mean, it's a lot of people feel this way, are feeling this pain and feeling this displacement, and if we don't, get involved, it's that shit is going to be all vanished. So
yeah,
I still have hope for it.
Yeah.
And I know if there's any city that is not going to go quietly into the night, it's Seattle. So I still have faith in people's passion to, fight for the places that they love.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you for doing that. I feel like you kind of honestly were a bit of the public vanguard of that, at least in my life, of this rebellion against growth and the vanishing. So thank you very much. Thanks for coming on the show, for being here for a while. I really appreciate it. Was there anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to cover, or anything you'd like to plug or talk about?
I would just say, I encourage people to, join the conversation, tag me and stuff, send me stuff.
Yeah.
I definitely see it as a community effort, a collective, story sharing, image sharing. So, I think that's what has, made it successful and resonant. It's not just about me and my perspective or my worldview. I think the more people that can participate in that, the better it is. So folks can, get in touch with me. They can slide in my DMs, or they can email me at vanishingseattle@gmail.com, or check out the website vanishingseattle.org. And we'll do some events and stuff too, because I think the offline component is important too, and connecting that to the online. So and just thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
Conversations
Really, thank you. You're welcome back anytime. So this was Vanishing Seattle. Cynthia Brothers, thank you again so much for being here. You can find her on Instagram at Vanishing Seattle, on Twitter at Vanishing206, and on Facebook as Vanishing Seattle, and you should follow her and her work there. If you're listening and you're not subscribed, you can find us on Twitter, Seattle Sucks Pod. Follow us there. You can email us at Seattle Sucks Podcast, and you can listen to our podcast pretty much anywhere podcasts are available. So thank you again. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks.